as far as national planning is concerned, Vision 2030 remains the country's national plan. And Schedule 4 is very clear that national economic planning remains a national goal. We want to have a situation where we have a planning system that is chaired by the president with the governors as the key stakeholders, right? So sort of a national planning council, chairman is the president, the other members are the governors, they have maybe meetings once or twice a year, and they agree. This is what we want to see as a nation and for your individual counties. Once that agreement has been made, the budget coming from the Ministry of Finance, coming from the CRA, the Commission on Revenue Allocation, and what budget is then approved by Parliament should then adhere to that particular plan. To your question on infrastructure and the kind of stuff we've seen going on, once we have that system ongoing, and we plan to take Vision 2030 to Parliament as a sessional paper, right? So that Parliament approves Vision 2030 as the official national development plan for this country. And I should add that Vision 2030 is a very flexible plan, right? It's not a straight jacket we're talking about. We're saying we have a goal to be an upper middle income country by 2030. There are certain broad areas clearly we might develop economically, socially, and politically. It's clear we must develop infrastructure. So those are not no-brainers, really. So once we have a sessional paper, once we have a National Planning Council chaired by the President with the governors as the main stakeholders, there is no reason, in my view, why we should not see more aggressive and accelerated development going forward. In essence, I think that the political pillar which focuses on governance, which focuses on ensuring that we have an issue-based, people-centered, accountable and transparent democratic political system is critical. What remains is for us as a public to do our bit. It isn't enough to have the best judiciary or the best police force or the best electoral process if the citizens themselves do not respond. So what does that mean? It means that we must be people who actually respect institutions, who respect judicial decisions, who respect the police force, who will respect the political parties act, for instance, and all the stipulations therein if we're to end corruption in this country. So the economic pillar actually cannot be looked at in isolation. It does not work unless foundations work, unless the infrastructure is available, the right roads for transporting different goods, energy to supply and power the various factories, communications required for financial services, and the same thing with governance, unless you have a judicial system that is reliable, so that if I as a corporation have an issue, I know I'll take it to the court system in this country and I'll get a quick, fair and efficient judgment. So that is why, while the economic pillar is where the jobs are, unless we do this other stuff, which we are doing now, and I'm very confident it's happening, the economic pillar cannot take off. So that's one. Two, obviously, is what happened in 2008, 2007. Obviously, we had a tremendous hit in GDP growth with the violence in 2008. We dropped precipitously from 7.1% in 2007 to 1.6%. Now, ramping back up to 10% obviously takes some time. We had hoped that this year would have been 10%. It will not happen, obviously. But we are still very focused on getting to that 10% number in the next couple, 2 to 3 years. We must. And I think we will. I think, especially if we have a successful, and I believe we have a successful election this year, and we have successful devolution taking place, we will hit the 10% growth rate, because I expect we shall have competitive counties that will be driving up growth in the country. In many of the initiatives we have the Prime Minister's Roundtable, and we have stakeholder forums for every ministry with the private sector. We also have the Presidential Working Forum, which is chaired by the President of the private sector. We have the PPP bill, which is now going to go to Parliament. Cabinet has approved it, it's going to Parliament. And the idea of the PPP Act will be to set up a framework, a legal framework by which the private sector and the public sector can get together on public-type projects and get those going. We also, I just mentioned that we're going to take a sessional paper to Parliament. One of the goals of a sessional paper being discussed in Parliament, I hope, is that parliamentarians, as the people's representatives, will be able to engage with Vision 2030. We'll be able to consult with us, consult with the public. We shall be going around to the public. So there'll be a robust discussion, my hope is, a robust discussion on Vision 2030 this year. And I think that every candidate for presidency, for governorship, every political party manifesto ought to tell us what will their role be What strategies do they have to ensure that we achieve our Vision 2030 goals? And Vision 2030, again, let me say, is not a straight jacket. The year 2030 is going to come, whether we like it or not, God willing, and Kenya will be around in 2030. So either we plan for it or we don't. So the sessional paper proposes to say we have to plan for 2030. We have to make sure that we have strategies for becoming an upper middle income country where everybody is socially secure, where economically everyone has access to a job, where infrastructure-wise and governance-wise we're actually a leading country in this continent. And to do that can't happen without a long-term plan approved by our parliament. And so I think all this, a combination of all this stuff, the Wakilisha campaign, sessional paper, all the engagements we have with the private sector should begin to get people to understand what their role is. But simply speaking, just people listening to me right now, your role in Vision 2030 is to excel at what you do. Because Vision 2030 is just about what will Kenya look like in 2030 in every sector. So if you're a teacher today, are you an excellent teacher? Are you somebody who's actually preparing young kids to be global competitors in 2030? People who can be whatever it is they'll be doing, whatever profession they'll be in, able to do that in Nairobi, in New Jersey, in Beijing, whatever, and compete globally. If you're a doctor, are you doing your best? If you're an industrialist, right? And by the way, who is an industrialist? You could be in combat today with your Jokali shop. Do you have a 2030 plan to be a major industrialist by the year 2030? It doesn't have to be you. You can set up a system that your son actually takes over, your daughter takes over. So really, all of us in what we do are part of Vision 2030. The difference is, are we doing it just to be better than the next guy? Or are we doing what we're doing to be at a global standard of doing it?